We're really glad that you could join us for our final virtual monthly event of 2022 before we slide into 2023. And really glad to have you for reducing plastic waste at your home. And our friends from Evergy, we want to say thank you to them for sponsoring, being a free sponsor for this event. And I am going to, I don't know, Leslie, if you would like to introduce Lori or not.
Yeah. Oh, I love this picture. We affectionately call Lori Landfill Lori on the Mia board. And she's cycling off, and I don't know, we just will not be able to replace her. Landfill Lori is irreplaceable, but yes, she works for the City of Springfield Environmental Services Department and provides all kinds of education. And I'm really, really excited about this, Lori. Thank you. I know you have so many cool programs you offer for schools in the area. And I just feel like we are really blessed to have you all to ourselves for an hour. Thank you.
Well, I am excited to be here. And my tagline is typically, I get paid to talk trash. So I am very excited. And I definitely want to give a shout out also to one of my coworkers, Sarah, who is also on the call. We have been working to always try to expand the programs that we have available. And Sarah has been working for the past year on a variation of plastic education. And so y'all are actually serving as guinea pigs for a version of what Sarah has been helping to develop. So definitely special thanks to her. But I commend all of you for being here after a very busy day, and it's the holiday season. So I thank you for investing just a little bit of your time to focus on a topic that just seems to be becoming more and more important, especially for those of us working in any aspect of environmental education, and that is the issue of plastic waste. How do we work to purge plastic? And so the goal of this evening's session is to look at what we've got going in our own lives and offer some suggestions and ideas on ways that we could start to consider cutting back on our household plastic. Now, before we get too far into content, I do want to preface it with, please have grace with yourself. We are all at different points in our lives. Some of us have toddlers at home, or we have elderly parents that we're taking care of, or you've got a dual income working family, and we're just busy. And so whatever point you are at in your personal life, look at tonight's conversation through the lens of, where are you at? And don't try to feel like you have to solve the whole problem all at once. Take small little bits and be ready to start thinking about how you could personally consider making some waste reduction, specifically in the realm of plastic waste within your own home. So don't get overwhelmed. We're going to do this together, but start small and go from there. So let's dive in to cutting back on plastic waste. So the reality is, if we stop and think about it, we have plastic everywhere. It is in every part of our daily lives, from the grocery store trip, and the food items that we purchase may be wrapped in plastic on the outside. They may be in a paperboard box with plastic wrapping on the inside. We may have our carts filled with those single-use beverage bottles, and then we've got the plastic shopping bags that we use to transport everything from the grocery cart to our car into our homes. And so we've got plastic coming in lots of different formats. We've got our personal hygiene products that are packaged in plastic, and our cute little storage cubbies that are plastic, we've got our beauty and skincare items and the tools that we use for beautifying ourselves. We just have plastic everywhere, including our children's toys. And as we look at this season of life that we are in, and we're heading into the holiday season or the new year, this is a perfect time to just stop and do a self-assessment of where is plastic in my home and in my life, and are there things I could personally do to start reducing that plastic waste in my home. So before we get too far into actual content of plastic, let's do a little fast facts quiz. We're going to use some data specifically from the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And so according to the EPA, the average person throws away about how many pounds of trash per day? Go ahead and use the chat to just type in a number, throw it out there. How many pounds is each person throwing away per day? So we've got a variety of numbers coming up. We've got 3s, we've got 6s, we've got lots of 3s. And so the actual number is 4.9 pounds. So on average, all of us are generating about 5 pounds of waste every day. Now, this is just all types of waste. So it's not just plastic specific, but all kinds of waste. On average, we are all generating almost 5 pounds per day per person. So let's narrow the field a little bit to plastic specifically. According to the EPA, the most recent numbers that we have available in 2018, approximately how many million tons of plastic were generated in 2018. So again, use your chat to type in your estimate. How many tons per, way too many, I agree. But if you can get an actual number estimate, we've got 52 million. 8 million. Wait, that's the amount entering the ocean. Lots of different estimates coming through, and the actual amount in 2018 was 36 million tons of just plastic were generated in 2018. Now, we need to pause a moment and reflect on the enormity of that number. That's a big number. And think about, this was pre-pandemic numbers. And so I would argue that post-pandemic, we are probably generating way more than that now. But as of 2018, those were the most current estimates that we had available. And then one final fast fact quiz. According to the EPA, only blank million of those tons were actually recycled. So of that 36 million, how many of those tons actually got recycled? And yes, Dana, that is just the United States. Okay, so we've got an estimate of 3 million, 5 million, 8 million, 2.8, very specific. And yes, if you said, oops, wait, go back to that one. If you said 3 or close to 3, you were correct. So that is an awful lot of plastic that is being generated, and only 3 million of it, 3 million tons in 2018 were actually being recycled. Now, as we look ahead, we could definitely say, Houston, we definitely have a problem. This is definitely an environmental problem that we need to be addressing more aggressively. It didn't just happen, however, overnight. We're going to take a quick little walk down the history of plastic memory lane to look at a very brief timeline of how in the world did we get to the point where we're at today, where we've got 36 million tons of plastic being generated every year, and only 3 million of that being recycled. So it started back in 1868 with the invention of celluloid, which was actually a plant-based material, and it was invented specifically to address making billiard balls. Billiard balls at that time were being made out of the ivory that was being harvested from elephants. And so it was having an impact on the elephant population. And so in an effort to protect the elephants and protect the ivory being harvested from their tusks, celluloid was invented for the purpose of creating billiard balls made out of this material. However, it was just for that one material, and it was a very small, very specific invention for that material, and again, made out of celluloid, a plant-based material. In 1907 came along, we saw the invention of a material called bakelite, and it was a heated substance. It was designed to be a lot more sturdy, and so it began to be utilized to create household items. And then in 1939, nylon made its entrance into a material that became part of the war effort. Then in 1955, we began seeing plastic entering into daily society, and we entered an era of throwaway living. We started the process of that point of no return, utilizing plastic into our everyday lives. And so plastic was promoted as a way for housewives to cut down on the amount of time they were spending doing housework. So don't worry about washing the dishes, just throw them away. Same thing with the silverware, same thing with the cups. It's all designed to just be thrown away. From that point forward, starting in 1960 to where we find ourselves now, plastic has continued to increase as a material used in every aspect of daily life, everything from our household items to our children's toys. And then in 1988, NOAA produced the evidence of what was really happening with this conglomeration of plastic waste. They had the evidence showing that because it is such a lightweight material, it travels easily. And when it makes its way into our waterways, it eventually was making its way to the ocean, where the currents were pulling it into a conglomerated area that we now know as the Great Garbage Patch. The one that was discovered in 1988 was limited just to the Pacific Ocean. However, since that discovery in 1988, we now have numerous other garbage patches that have been documented and discovered. And it makes me crazy to think about, okay, in 1988, we saw this happening. So why didn't we do a massive outcry of, wait a minute, we have got to stop this? Instead, plastic production has increased, and we now have vast amounts of plastic that are in every aspect of our environment. And part of the problem with plastic as a material is that it doesn't do what other materials do. Materials like glass and aluminum and steel or tin and paper are made of natural materials, so they naturally decompose, they biodegrade. But plastic is chemically produced. It's made of petroleum. And so instead of biodegrading, it photodegrades. So it interacts with the sun and the weather elements to not ever completely go away. It just breaks into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic that scientists are now referring to as microplastics. And so we have created a reliance on plastic. We have allowed it into every aspect of our lives, and we now have a pretty significant problem. One of the things that we have done for our citizens in Springfield is produced what the screen that you're looking at right now, a guide to plastic recycling, because the challenge with plastic is that it is not a one size fits all. When you go to recycle glass or aluminum or steel or tin or paper, that all is the same material. And so it doesn't have to, it's not segregated. But plastics, as you can see on this screen, they have a numbering system, and that numbering system indicates the chemical formula that was used to make that particular type of plastic. The lower the number, the more simplistic the chemical formula is for making that plastic type. The higher the number, the more chemically complex that particular plastic number is. The lower the number, the easier it is to break that plastic apart and recycle it and make it into something new. The higher the number, the more challenging it is to recycle that plastic number. Not impossible, but definitely more challenging. There's a question that Sharon asked in the chat. What is the Plastic Association doing to allow us to recycle numbers 5, 6, and 7? Sharon, that's a great question. And I'm going to save that until we go through this conversation about plastics, and then we'll come back to that one. So don't let me forget, and we'll come back to that one here in a minute. But plastics present a unique challenge because each number represents a different type of plastic, and different types of plastics have different abilities to be recycled. This guide that we have produced in Springfield is a way to help our citizens better understand what types of plastics can be recycled in Springfield, because part of the challenge with recycling plastics, as well as actually recycling any other material, is that a recycling program is only as good as the recycling infrastructure available in your community. So when you put things into a recycling bin, the next step in the process is that it goes to a facility called a materials recovery facility. At that facility, they take all of the material and they view it as a commodity. It is a business for them. And so all of those materials that are put into a recycling bin and make their way to a materials recovery facility are actually the feedstock for making things into new items. And so we as consumers have to make sure that we're putting correct material in and that it is of a viable status that they can then turn around and sell it to a manufacturer who will be able to use it as the raw material for making their new things. And so part of the challenge with plastic specifically is you can only turn around and sell something if there's a market for it. And so right now, our materials recovery facility staff have indicated to us here in Springfield that they only have a market for plastic numbers 1, 2, and 5. And so you can see on this little guide that we produced for our citizens, there are other numbers of plastics that right now in Springfield, we don't have a market for. So unfortunately, we're not collecting those in our recycling bins. Plastic number 4s, we don't allow in our bins, but those do have a source within the community where we can send people of, you can recycle plastic number 4s at these places. Until we have a national conversation about standardizing recycling across the country, we're going to find that recycling is going to change from community to community, from state to state, because there is not right now a national standard for recycling. It can look very different from one place to another place. And so this is a tool that we are using with our citizens to help them better understand this challenge of what can and can't be recycled here in the Springfield community. For fun and games, if you want to live dangerously, try recycling your number 2 and number 7. They don't work. They're two different types of plastics. So here in Springfield, we are focused on only recycling numbers 1, 2, and 5. And to focus on those just a little bit more in depth, number one, plastics. At this point in the day, I am not even going to attempt to say that big giant scientific name, but number one, plastics are the PET or the PETE. Plastics are the only material that have this numbering system on them. And I really think the older I get, it really needs to be a law that that number needs to be like half the size of the product, because I can never find the number. But plastic number one is going to be the PET products. These are typically going to hold food items or beverage items. So we're going to see PET, plastic number one, is going to be our salad dressings, our peanut butter jars, our mayonnaise jars, our bottled water, our soda bottles. Now, for those of you who have been recyclers for a while, you might remember the era where you were supposed to take the lids off, take the labels off, flatten your water or soda bottle so that they don't take up space in the recycling bin. However, what we have heard from our materials recovery facility staff is that thanks to advancements in technology, you no longer have to take the labels off. You no longer have to take the lids off. You can leave it all together. They shred the material, and then because of different densities of the plastics, they put it in a centrifuge. The lighter plastics float to the top and be skimmed off to make new lids. The heavier plastics sink to the bottom, get cleaned up, and then can be used to make more plastic. So don't take your lids off anymore. You don't have to flatten them. They want them to maintain that 3D shape. You do need to help out our recycling infrastructure by making sure that we are putting material into a recycling bin that can be turned around and used as reusable material. So we want to make sure that liquids are emptied out and that food waste is out of the jar or the container, especially that pesky peanut butter jar. Make sure you don't have to put it through the dishwasher, but definitely give it a rinse and get all the food gunk out. That helps to prevent contamination in the recycling, the next step of the recycling process. The next number that we focus on here in Springfield is the number 2 plastics. That is our high density polyethylene, or our HDPE plastic. These are definitely very easy to recycle. They're also easy to reuse. These typically are your jugs. So the milk jugs, the laundry jug, the shampoo bottles, the liquid soap bottles. Milk jugs in particular are easy to reuse. I don't know if anybody else has a stash of them strategically placed for plant watering purposes, but my husband has them. There's some out in the laundry room, some out on the front porch for plant watering duties. So they can very easily be reused and repurposed. This tends to be your colored plastics. So the laundry detergents that tend to be in a colored plastic. The only colored plastic that you never want to put into a recycling bin is black plastic. That tends to color all of the other plastic black. And so avoid black plastic in your recycling bin, but any other color is able to go into the recycling bin. And then here in Springfield, we are also able to recycle number 5 plastics, also referred to as polypropylene, the PP plastic. These tend to be your food containers. So your sour cream tubs, your butter tubs, your yogurt containers, your soda cups that you get from the convenience store. If you had pie and Cool Whip topping for Thanksgiving, the Cool Whip containers tend to be the number 5 plastic. These are also recyclable, but they are also great for repurposing or reusing. Several years ago, I was helping my family clean out my mom's kitchen cupboards, and we found a stack of 25 Cool Whip containers because they were perfect for putting leftovers into. And then you got to play the game of what's in that container in the refrigerator. But these are containers that can be not only recycled, but they tend to be easier for reusing or repurposing, storing things in. Pinterest has a dozen ideas for making great reuse of your plastic number 5 items. And then Dana had a question about a lot of municipalities don't take number 5. And Dana, it really just depends completely on the materials recovery facility and what they have a market for. This one is definitely one that can be challenging for the materials recovery facility to do recycling if they don't have a market for it. So again, your recycling is only going to be as effective as having a next step in the process, somebody who will buy the material to turn it into new products. So with all of this and seeing that there are 7 different types of plastics, and I've told you that here in Springfield, we're only able to recycle right now numbers 1, 2, and 5, you might be having this kind of a feeling right now. So what am I supposed to do with this plastic waste? How in the world am I supposed to reduce it if I don't have any options for recycling it? And so I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about what are some strategies that you could begin to consider. And again, encouraging you to look at it through the lens of your own personal life right now at this moment in time, the challenges that you might have, and be kind to yourself. Don't let yourself get to this state. There are solutions, but remember, we're going to start small, okay? So many of us grew up with memorizing the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And the reality is that every little step definitely makes a difference. However, tonight I'm going to add for you a 4th R that is easy to forget. And actually, in being honest with you, this is probably the one that takes the most effort, and that is refuse. As far as I know, the word no is still a viable option in our vocabulary, and yet it's so hard to implement. And so if you're going to start with the refuse step, I would encourage you to start with one thing. Maybe over the course of the next week, do a personal assessment inventory of the plastic that's represented in your own home. And is there a place where you could make a choice to, you know what, I am going to eliminate that. I'm going to refuse to any more purchase that type of plastic, and I'm going to go in this direction instead. So for example, my grandchildren love the single serve applesauce that comes in little plastic containers, the foil covering that the foil is not recyclable. And so I decided this is stupid. So I refuse to buy the single serve applesauce anymore. Or maybe for you, it's the plastic Go-Gurt things that your kids love. They're fun to eat, but then that plastic is not recyclable. And so refusing to buy that particular thing anymore, but then what am I going to do instead? And this is where it gets challenging. So for my refuse, I refused to buy the single serve plastic applesauce. So I decided I'll just buy a large container of applesauce, and then we can dish it out into single serve reusable containers for the kids. So when I went to the grocery store, I was also going to refuse to purchase my applesauce in a large container, in a plastic container. I was going to go with glass because glass is also recyclable. And in my effort to reduce plastic waste, I was going to buy glass instead of plastic. However, when I went to look at my options on the shelf, there were no glass applesauce jars available, because from an economics perspective, I get it. It's easier to produce plastic jars and to ship plastic jars, much more lightweight. The glass jars are heavier, but drat, I was ready to make my choice to refuse the small plastic containers by going with a glass jar, and he didn't give me that choice. So sometimes the refuse, you might have to go through a couple of different iterations before you can come to an option that works for you and your particular refuse choice. The next choice that you can make is to reduce. And again, looking through the lens of doing maybe a plastic assessment in your home. What kinds of plastics are you using, and what are your options for maybe considering a reduction in that particular plastic waste stream? And so, for example, maybe you've got an entire shelf dedicated to your single-use plastic water bottles, or maybe you've got a stash of the plastic bags from produce shopping, or maybe you've got a collection of plastic grocery bags. And so making a commitment to, I'm going to reduce my use of those things. So for the water bottles, instead of the single-use items, you're going to go to investing in a reusable water bottle, and you're going to buy your family, everybody in your family one, and that's their Christmas stocking this year. Or the plastic produce bags, investing in some of the netted reusable bags that you just take along with you and put your produce in that. Or the plastic shopping bags, investing in reusable shopping bags. Now, the challenge for that one is that you actually have to remember to take them with you to the grocery store. You don't want to end up like this, forgot them again. So whatever your reduction choice is, make it one thing that you have noticed that you are having an abundance of plastic waste in, and make that an effort toward reduction. The next R could be the reuse and repurpose. As we've mentioned, Pinterest has tons of ideas on ways to reuse that collection of plastic containers, everything from designing a kids game for a rainy day. And yes, Laura, I do have more than one recycling meme. To making a pretty little container for your homemade goodies that you're going to deliver to your neighborhood. Ways that you can reuse or repurpose that plastic item. And then again, recycling is always an option, but remembering that it is only going to be as viable an option as there is a recycling infrastructure within a community. One of the challenges that I find constantly when I'm working with some of our smaller communities, we just have lots of communities around us that don't have a recycling infrastructure. They don't have a recycling service within their community. And so recycling isn't an option for people living in those communities. So a variety of different things that you can think about. Recycling is one option, but refuse, reduce, and reuse and repurpose are also options. So looking at recommendations that I have for you, I've compiled a collection of some of my favorite resources that I want to share with you. And I have some links that, instead of putting links into the chat, you're going to receive an email after this presentation with the collection of the links so that you can go back and revisit them at your leisure, instead of having to hunt and follow along and lose track of where we're at with the links and putting them into the chat. So Laura, I'm going to let you go ahead and do the trailer. Let's start with the Baggett movie first. My technology was not playing nicely.
This story begins with a single plastic bag. One bag that I got from my local grocery store to carry home a single container of peach yogurt. Once I got home, I shoved the bag in with all the other bags, next to another bag full of other bags, and I never really thought about it. Maybe I tried not to think about it. I mean, I'm an average guy. I'm not what you consider a tree hugger. I try to be informed, I try to do the right thing, but I find that it can all be a bit overwhelming at times. I live in a small town in Colorado, and it wasn't until my town challenged another town a few hours away to see who could reduce their use of plastic bags the most that I first started to think about plastic bags and what we do with them. I mean, we all have a lot of bags, right? Everybody does the same thing. We collect them, we shove them anywhere they'll go, like under the sink, into closets, junk drawers. We throw a pile away every now and then just to be done with them, because they're disposable, right? They were created to be thrown away. But let's face it, there's a dirty little secret here, even if we won't admit it. Just because plastic is disposable doesn't mean it just goes away. After all, where is away? There is no away. It actually sticks around for a really long time. That got me thinking about all the endless products made out of plastic. A lot of them designed to be used for less than one day. Heck, less than 15 minutes even. Once I began looking around, pretty much everything seemed to be made of plastic. Could all this plastic in my life maybe even be bad for me? So I started looking into it. The way it doesn't go away, the way it pollutes, the way it flies and floats and drifts and clogs and entangles, the way it gets into things so big and so small, the way we can't escape it anymore, the way, eventually, we may not have any recourse. We'll all just simply have to stand up and say, bag it.
And Laura, we can stop it right there. So Bag It is available as either you can purchase it as a DVD or you can stream it via Amazon or iTunes. It's pretty fun, but it is also very thought-provoking as a documentary. And I would encourage you to watch that for family-friendly viewing night in your home and to really begin thinking about and putting a plan together of plastic in your own homes. The second movie that I want to share with you is one called Microplastic Madness. This is a kid-friendly movie, and it is the story of a group of 4th and 5th graders in New York who spent about 2 years investigating plastic in their environment and then learning how to become advocates for plastic reduction within their own community. So Laura, if you want to cue up Microplastic Madness, and then we'll chat about that one a little bit.
I'm actually looking at all the microplastics.
There's so much microplastics. In 2050, we'll be 43 years old. And this is how our ocean will look like.
It's crazy.
Sometimes we find more than 100 pieces of microplastics in a single fish.
Is our cafeteria plastic part of the plastic pollution problem? Is plastic hurting our environment and people too?
I could cry. I was blown away. So many shocking facts.
Was eye-opening.
It was awesome.
I laughed, I cried. Beautiful to see our children, our communities working to make big changes.
You should start plastic free lunch day in your school. We want the people too. I live and have it free. We want to live a GPS phone.
Thank you, guys.
And we can go ahead and stop it right there. And now the tricky part is, can we get back to Lori's screen? And that should be it. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So both of these movies are movies that City of Springfield hosted as what we call an EnviroFlick, a community viewing movie event that we then followed up with a community conversation on the topic. Both of these revolved around around plastic. We showed them at different points in different years. But Microplastic Madness, unfortunately, is not available as a streaming option or for purchase. But if you contact this company, Cafeteria Culture, and let them know you're working with as part of an environmental education association, and you're very interested in being able to watch the movie, my guess is they will probably work with you to do that. They also work with classroom teachers to make the movie available in classrooms. Especially Title I classrooms, they will give permission for it to be viewed in Title I classrooms at no cost. They also have some curriculum materials that support teaching the next generation about how to reduce their plastic waste reliance. And so it's a really, really powerful movie, and I would highly encourage you to investigate both of those movie resources. And then I've got a couple of, okay, there we go. A couple of website resources to share. One is called My Plastic Free Life, and the other is through Recycle Coach. And both of these have just a variety of tips available for plastic waste reduction in your life. And so My Plastic Free Life, she's got a list of her 100 top steps on how to reduce plastic waste in your home. And I love her opening sentence that this list is not meant to be overwhelming, but simply to show what is possible. Choose a few that seem doable and that will make the most impact. No one can do it all at once, but we can all get started. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would encourage you to continue to keep in mind, and I will keep hammering at. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't try to do it all at once. Pick one thing to get started. And so she has a variety of different, very doable, user-friendly ideas that you can begin to consider, starting with, like we've already talked about, the reusable shopping bags or the bottled water. Things like bring your own containers for either takeout food or leftovers, investing in that reusable water bottle, eliminate carrying a reusable drinking straw so that you don't have to rely on a plastic drinking straw. So just a variety of strategies that she has assembled all in one place. Pick and choose, go through the list, find one or two that you think will work for you and your family. Maybe make it a family conversation and decide as a family, okay, what are a couple of these that we could all begin to make a commitment to as a family? And then the Recycle Coach idea, 30 ways to reduce plastic waste in your home. Again, an emphasis on your home care products. So something as simple as switching from solid or liquid soap to just a solid soap bar, or instead of a disposable plastic razor, investing in a metal razor, or just your wooden combs or brushes, substituting those in place of the plastic combs or brushes. So just a variety of resources there. And then finally, my favorite resource is this one's been around for a while, and some of you may be familiar with this one, The Story of Stuff. And it started with, these are little short movies that really pack a punch, and she's got a variety of different topics available. And it all started with the story of overconsumption. How did we become this stuff-focused society? How did that even happen? And then, so she's got a variety of topics that have been added over the years of the story of bottled water. We've got electricity, we've got microbeads, we've got microfibers. And then their newest addition is this one, the story of solving plastic. It starts with just an overview of what this series is about. And then there are several mini movies and a quiz that you can take to see how well you can identify potential solutions that are out there to the plastic crisis. I do this work all the time, and I only scored a 3 out of 5. I think it's a little bit sneaky and a little bit tricky. And what sounds like an obvious solution is not necessarily the best solution. And so things that are happening in other places around the country, including an emphasis on producer responsibility. And there was a question in the chat a while back about what is the company's role in a lot of the Plastic Association. What are they doing to allow, what are they doing to allow us to recycle some of these other numbers? producer responsibility has to be part of this solution conversation, because until the producers really get serious about changing the type of plastic packaging that is overwhelming, and we as consumers start using that refuse step a little more, we're going to continue to see plastic growing in our environment. And so it is a conversation that has to be not just all on the consumer side, but then also at the producer level as well. And so this source, designing plastic out of packaging, it would be a great one to look at. To maybe your role is to begin to take on that advocacy role and to really advocate for producers really being more aggressive in doing their part in reducing the amount of plastic waste that we're seeing in our environment. So let me get back to my screen here. And so hopefully this has given you just a few ideas. This is not intended to be a be-all and end-all list of resources, list of ideas that are more discouraging than encouraging, because as we started, we all realize plastics are everywhere. And so I am here to join you in being part of the conversation. Sharon, great question. How do we get their attention? Part of that is advocating with your legislators and writing letters and finding out who do I talk to about making this a priority in the legislative sessions. And so just finding ways to get their attention, yeah, can be challenging, but I don't think it is a wasted effort. And so I am available to have this conversation with you. This is a starting point, maybe. Please don't hesitate to contact me, whether it's a week or a month or a year from now. Don't do an hour from now, because I'm going to be signing off after this. But I am happy to join you in the conversation and join you in your efforts. Our motto for our department is our combined efforts make one big impact. We can't do this as single individuals. We really have to work together to make this a priority. But it is something that we can begin putting on our radar and start small as individuals, but then band together as a community as well.